I'm so happy to get to spend time with you today on Today with Marilyn and Sarah. Oh my goodness, does God have something totally magnificent for you. I can't even begin to tell you how excited I am to share with you today on something so fundamentally essential and necessary for every single one of us. And I know when you're watching today, I know you've got struggles in your own personal life, be that through your finances or some health issues, some relationship challenges, oh my goodness, some decisions that you have to make, all kinds of issues. Please get on the phone or get on the website. We want to pray for you that God would help you in all those respective areas. One of the things I want to speak on today that is really going to minister and kind of zero right into your heart is about relationships. And you know, we all have difficulties, challenges, sometimes successes, but struggles sometimes with relationships. You know, you have friendships that have, you know, kind of ups and downs in them. You have family relationships, dynamics. Some of you who are married, you know, that's kind of an adventure in and of itself with our kids, all these different things and challenges with relationships. And today I want to minister specifically on relationships and the very difficult things that we go through. And sometimes we have failures with relationships. I remember I had a friend, longtime friend of mine, and we hit kind of some choppy water. And it was choppy water for a long time. And when I say a long time, I'm talking almost 10 years of choppy water. And it was interesting to watch God kind of work through that relationship, change me, grow me, make some adjustments. There's some dysfunction that I had. And God started to really work on those things in my heart. And over the course of 10 years, then the friendship after 10 years or so has been restored. And it's a wonderful, wonderful testimony to the goodness and love of God and transforming power of God. And so you may be watching today and you may be struggling in some relationships. And of course, we want to pray for you. So get on the phone, get on the website. But I want to talk to you about failure in relationships, and where you've struggled and you've had shortcomings. And you know, when we have failure in relationships, whether that's through maybe a divorce, or maybe that's a friendship that's been seemingly lost, or there's been irreparable damage sometimes, you know, things were said that shouldn't have been said, and hardships, and just all kinds of things. But failure and seeing redemption out of that failure. And if you have your Bible, I want to invite you to pop over to John chapter 4. And who we're looking at today, and I just be real honest with you, this possibly might be one of my favorite chapters in the whole Bible, because this is a chapter that talks about a woman who had failure after failure after failure of broken relationships. And she struggled. She wanted intimacy. Us as women, we want intimacy. We want closeness. We want friendships. But she had had one train wreck, one failure after another, and she was living in that failure. And maybe that's you today. Maybe you're living in failed relationship after failed relationship after failed relationship. And I want to speak hope into your life that God can redeem that, can transform that, and bring you out and bring you through to tremendous victory, because that's what we see in John chapter 4. And so when we think about this woman, let me just kind of give you some context here. This is a woman who was a Samaritan woman. And it says that Jesus, in the beginning of the chapter, Jesus needed to go through Samaria. Now I want to walk you through just a little bit of historical context so you kind of understand a little bit of the backdrop, the context of what's happening between Jesus and this woman. First of all, you recall Jesus is Jewish and he's going through Samaria. Samaria and the Jews, they didn't really have a good relationship between them. Samaritans usually did not like the Jews, and the Jews looked down on and thought Samaritans were second class. So there was already cultural conflict, if you will, between these two groups. Furthermore, at this time in history, men and women didn't really talk to each other unless they were, of course, married. If this was a foreign woman or a strange woman, you never met her, it would be completely inappropriate, culturally inappropriate for Jesus to talk to her and for her to talk with Jesus. And so when Jesus comes and he says, I need to go through Samaria, I need to. He doesn't say it, but the Bible says he needed to go through Samaria. It's interesting because he could have gone around, he could have kind of avoided it, and most religious proper Jews would have avoided Samaria so they didn't get, tainted or corrupted by the Gentile Jews, the yucky people. And Jesus didn't do that. He went through. He said he needed to go through Samaria. And when he starts into Samaria, it says that he was tired from his journey, and he sat down next to a well around noontime or so. And his disciples went into the city, because the wells were oftentimes on the outskirts of a city or a town, and the disciples went in to get some food. Jesus was tired, and he sat down by this well on the outskirts around noontime or so. And as he's sitting down, a woman comes to draw water from the well. Well, this is a really interesting time for this woman to come and draw water, because normally, culturally, the women would come and draw the water either in the morning, to have water to help them through the day, or in the evening to get water for the night. They went also in the morning or the evening because you would avoid the heat of the day. Now, as women, we tend to do everything, at least with a couple friends, go for coffee. We don't do things oftentimes by ourselves that much. We go to the bathroom together. We don't, hey, let's go, we'll work on our makeup, all that stuff. We're social. It's kind of how we're wired up. So this woman, when she came to the well and Jesus is sitting at the well, she comes around noontime, and she comes when nobody else is there, just Jesus. Now, there's some weird things going on here. She's coming, and first of all, you get Jesus, a Jewish man, going through Samaria. Shouldn't normally do that. And she's coming at a very unusual time to draw water by herself. Two strange things, if you will. And I want to speak to you because when we are broken in our relationships, we do strange things. We act sometimes abnormally, we act in isolated ways, we withdraw. And I want to speak to you today. If you have withdrawn, you've isolated, you're broken in your relationships, please get on the phone, get on the website. We want to pray for you that God would help you in these broken relationships and help you in your heart. Because those broken relationships, it hurts. I mean, it just fundamentally, it hurts. And it's hard to get through and over and past those hurdles of that hurt. But Jesus wants to help you today. Just like he came to the well, he's coming to you today to speak to you in that hurt, in that isolation, in that withdrawal. And he wants to minister hope to you, minister love to you, and he wants to minister healing to your heart. So get on the phone, get on the website. We want to pray for you. And when this woman comes with her jar, and she's going to get some water, and Jesus says to her, basically, I'll paraphrase it, modern 21st century, I'm thirsty, would you please give me a drink of water? And this was just revolutionary, that he would say this to this woman. I'm thirsty, would you please give me a drink of water? And she's blown away. I mean, she's like, what are you doing? How is it? And she immediately throws out the cultural norms and says, hey, this is inappropriate. You shouldn't be talking with me. How is it that you, a Jew, speak with me, a Samaritan woman? Jesus has violated all the cultural norms, what is commonly, traditionally, and culturally acceptable. He's jumping out of the box, and he, as a man, and then as a Jewish man, is talking to a Samaritan woman. And Jesus, he defies all cultural norms. And what I love is he initiates this conversation. It wasn't the woman who started the discussion. It was Jesus coming into her world, coming into her brokenness, coming into her state of failure, and really speaking into that and initiating the relationship. And that's what he does with us. He initiates the relationship with us, number one, because he loves us. Number two, because he wants to repair, redeem, restore us so that we can walk and have healthy relationships and healthy intimacy. Again, if you're struggling in this area, pick up the phone and call or get on the website. We want to pray for you. And so the woman starts to talk with Jesus. How is it that you, a Jewish man, speak with me, a Samaritan woman? And Jesus continues the conversation. He just doesn't tell her, shut up, lady, give me some water. He doesn't do that, because that's not who Jesus is. He's the personification of love and relationship and connection and wanting to have deep, healthy, intimate relationships with us. So he starts talking with her and he says, look, if you knew who it was that was asking you for a drink of water, the gift of God, you would ask me, and I would give you living water. Oh my goodness. And they start having this conversation, and the lady's like, well, how is it that you can give me living water, you know? You don't have anything to dwell in. And he said, da, da, and they just keep going on and on. They have this really cool conversation that starts to develop and grow and unfold. And I don't know that she's not enjoying this conversation. And Jesus clearly is talking with her because he's interested in who she is, not just what she can do, but more so who she is. And that speaks to the very core sometimes of what's wrong in our hearts. So many times in our lives we struggle because we've been used. We've been used as an object. We've been mistreated. And truthfully too, let me say this, God has really dealt with me on this. Sometimes when we treat other people as objects or we use other people, that hurts us. In Proverbs it says, when you hurt someone else, it hurts you. You can't hurt somebody else without hurting yourself. And so you may be watching today and maybe you've been a person who's hurt other people and it's ripping you up. It's hurt it's come back and boomeranged on you. We want to pray for you today. Get on the phone, get on the website. We want to pray. But what Jesus does next is just absolutely takes your breath away. Because they're having this really beautiful conversation. But then Jesus, he throws a monkey in a wrench in the whole conversation. I mean, he just makes the whole thing explode and go nuclear. Because he says to her, and I love this, he goes to the very heart of what the issue is. He says, go and call your husband. And the Samaritan woman, she's been having this nice conversation with this really cool Jewish guy. It's been going really well. And suddenly, the conversation becomes extremely abrupt. I mean, there's a sudden halt to the discussion. And she says, I don't have a husband. Stay tuned. We're going to come right back.
Do you long to serve God with grace and strength and to reflect Christ in every word and action of your life? Every one of us has an internal battle between the spirit and flesh. For your gift of $25 or more, we will send you Having a Merry Spirit by best-selling author Joanna Weaver. Joanna directs your gaze past your own shortcomings to the God who stands ready, willing and able to make a new woman out of you. Drawing on stories of the 3 biblical Marys, Joanna shows how you can find what you long for: hope, healing, wholeness, and joy. We will also send you Sarah's book, Jesus Chicks, and the accompanying 2-CD Jesus Chicks audio teaching set. Be encouraged through the lives of everyday women who interacted with Jesus throughout the Gospels. Learn how these broken women encountered Jesus in their daily living and how you can too. Having a Merry Spirit and Jesus Chicks will launch you toward lasting personal transformation from the inside out. Call or click today.
We are so excited to invite you on our next group trip. Oh my goodness, it's going to be over the top, thoroughly amazing, and we're going to Portugal and Switzerland. This is a trip opportunity of a lifetime, and you don't want to miss it. Mom, tell us some of the things we're doing.
Well, we get to have healing meetings in Switzerland. Hey, is that awesome? And there's a lot spiritually going on there, but Portugal is awesome. It's like God is just pouring out His Spirit, and we get to go in and add to that outpouring. You must go with us. Bring friends, bring children, bring grandchildren, and let's see God move in Europe in a special way, in Switzerland and Portugal through you.
And you know, you can get on the phone, get on the website. We want to pray for you. You might be saying, I can't go, time, money, all this stuff. But we want to pray for you that God would help you to go and open up all those doors. Come with us to Switzerland and Portugal today. I know I left you hanging there, and I did that on purpose because this is like the big shocker statement. The shocker, whoa, freaked out, I have no husband. And I want to encourage you. I'm going to do just a little quick break here. Man, this is a really powerful CD series that I've done on Jesus Chicks. The women, a few women, I look in depth at a few women in Jesus' life and how He interacted with them and how they were completely changed and transformed. So I want to encourage you, get on the phone, get on the website. This series will help you in your walk with God like nothing you've ever heard before. It's a really, really, really powerful series. And when you think about the Samaritan woman, she says, I have no husband. That's kind of the statement of the century. Jesus says to her, you're right. You don't have a husband, you've had 5, and the guy you're with now isn't your husband. And that's kind of the wet blanket on the whole conversation. Because she's like, what do you say to that? Because what happens here is this. Jesus, oh my goodness, this just totally takes my breath away. Jesus goes to the very core of this woman and speaks to the biggest, single, most debilitating pain in her life. She does not have any success whatsoever in her marriage relationships, her relationships with men. And he exposes that. You know, that's not something in a casual conversation, let alone Jewish man, Samaritan woman. You're having a casual conversation about water, you know, and having a glass of water. You don't just suddenly take it off of this superficial and suddenly plunge down into the most vulnerable spot of her entire life. And he rips open the door and exposes this vulnerability. And you got to know this. Jesus knew from the very beginning when she came to draw water, he knew from the get-go what her story was. And Jesus came there on purpose. He intentionally sat down there to begin the conversation knowing full well her brokenness, knowing full well she couldn't accessorize, she couldn't hide, she couldn't, do that superficial veneer stuff. He knew from the very beginning what her deal was, what her Achilles heel was. He knew and he exposed it. He opened the door, because here's the thing, Jesus never wants to let you have shame in your life, never wants to let you remain broken. Never wants you to continue to have ongoing, continuous failure after failure after failure. And if you feel any of those things in your life today, please get on the phone. We want to pray for you. Get on the website, leave your prayer requests. We want to pray for you, because Jesus came to the Samaritan woman in the same way as an example to us, that he comes to us in our brokenness and all of the situations in our life where we've had failure and tremendous pain and hardship, and we're broken and just can never seem to get any kind of progress or tread. He comes to us at that point. And what I love about Jesus is he doesn't just kind of play the superficial game, oh, it's nice weather, He doesn't do all of that, because he wants to have a deeply personal and most foundational relationship with us in our lives. And so I just think that this Samaritan woman, she takes my breath away, because when Jesus says this to her and rips open this door, kind of exposes her most sensitive vulnerability, what does she do? She tries to change the subject. That seems pretty natural to us, right? I mean, that's what I do. Wow, we've been having a lot of snow or sun lately. Is this nice to see? No, he doesn't let her do that. He continues to talk with her. And this is an amazing thing with Jesus. He's sitting there having this conversation with her. And she's like, well, you Jewish people say that the mountain, worship on this mountain and all this stuff. And Jesus says to her, those who worship God must worship him in spirit and in truth. And she says to him, and her reply back is, well, Jesus, when the Messiah comes, we know he'll teach us all things. And this is one of the most powerful things, I think, in this whole conversation. Jesus says to her, when she says that, he replies to her and says, I who speak with you am he. I want you to catch the significance, the importance, the gravity of what he just told her. Not only did he expose her most deep, dark, most scary, most painful secret of her life, that she can't do relationships, she's broken, she's a failure, and she's had one continuous failure after failure after failure. He exposes all of that. Not only does he do that, but look at what he does. He says to her, after exposing her, he tells her who he is. I who speak with you am he. I am the Messiah. And from everything we read in the Bible, from the Gospels up to that point, it's very possible, I can't prove it, certainly wouldn't try to prove it, but it's very possible that she is the first person he ever tells that he is the Messiah. That he speaks to her and exposes the very core of who he is. And I find this to be so powerful and so transforming. The utter epitome of brokenness, of failure, of shortcoming, of mess, a messy life, comes and meets the epitome, the absolute personalization of tremendous salvation, of success, of redemption, of turnaround, of transformation. And the two of them collide and meet. And who initiated this collision? Who initiated this meeting? It wasn't her, it was Jesus. Jesus came and met this woman at the place of her greatest need, her greatest failure, the place of her greatest brokenness, and interacts, has a conversation with her, because he's totally engaged with who she is and how he wants to bring healing, transformation, redemption into her life. I want to encourage you, get on the phone right now, grab this CD series. This CD series will help you know Jesus in ways you've never known him before. He'll come into your heart in a strong way and repair, restore, redeem all that brokenness and all the failures and the shortcomings. Just like this Samaritan woman, you'll see Jesus in ways you've never seen him before. Get on the phone, grab this CD series, get on the website. It will be a massive, massive blessing in your life. And this woman, after Jesus says to her, I who speak with you am he. This woman, she's like completely amazed, astounded by this conversation. It is a life-changing conversation. And I find that to be true with Christ. Whenever I get around Christ, my life changes in good ways. It improves in ways that I don't expect. That was a shocker, but wonderful ways as well. And what happens when the disciples come to Jesus, remember they were back in the village getting him some lunch. The disciples come out and they see him talking to this Samaritan woman and they're like, what? What do you think you're doing? That's completely culturally unacceptable. The woman leaves her water pot there and says she goes back into the town and she says to the men, read it, she says to the men of the town, come and see a man who told me everything I ever did. Remember, here's a woman who is completely broken in her relationships and specifically in her relationships with men. But after her conversation with Jesus, she's redeemed, she's restored, she's repaired, and she specifically goes and finds the men in her village, many of whom she had slept with, been married to, had relationships with. She finds the exact people that had brokenness in her life, and she goes and speaks to them. And they're like, wow, we should come check this guy out who told her everything she ever did. We need to go find out who this guy is. And remember, the disciples brought Jesus lunch, but this woman, she brought Jesus her town. And what happens when we interact with Christ is he starts to rub off on us. And Jesus' desire for us can't just be all about us. But when we have that interaction, that conversation with Jesus, and we continue to talk with Jesus, then those conversations start to spill out into our, if you will, vertical or our horizontal relationships. And so people around us are like, wow, there's something different. Wow, you're more loving, you're more gracious, you're more kind. And we can't help it because of our interaction, our relationship with Jesus. And she brings out this town, this whole town comes out. And they listen to Jesus, and this is what they say. They say back to her, they say, we came out to see who Jesus was, this guy, because of who you are and what you told us. And we thought he was interesting, but now we believe that he is the Messiah. We believe in who Jesus is. He stayed there for a couple more days. But remember, he started this whole thing with this town from the one woman who was probably the most broken of the entire town. If you're broken today, get on the phone, get on the website. We want to pray for you. Make sure you grab this CD series. It will be a truly revolutionary, transformational experience for you today.
Do you long to serve God with grace and strength and to reflect Christ in every word and action of your life? Every one of us has an internal battle between the spirit and flesh. For your gift of $25 or more, we will send you Having a Merry Spirit by best-selling author Joanna Weaver. Joanna directs your gaze past your own shortcomings to the God who stands ready, willing and able to make a new woman out of you. Drawing on stories of the 3 biblical Marys, Joanna shows how you can find what you long for: hope, healing, wholeness, and joy. We will also send you Sarah's book, Jesus Chicks, and the accompanying 2-CD Jesus Chicks audio teaching set. Be encouraged through the lives of everyday women who interacted with Jesus throughout the Gospels. Learn how these broken women encountered Jesus in their daily living and how you can too. Having a Mary Spirit and Jesus Chicks will launch you toward lasting personal transformation from the inside out. Call or click today.
Fear is such an awful thing to experience and to try and work around. I think about some times when I was afraid when I was growing up, and things that I've feared that weren't necessarily true or accurate, or stuff that you just kind of like, wow, that makes me scared. And I really don't believe in any way, shape, fashion, or form that God wants us to be afraid. I remember when I was in college, my dad confronted me one night and he said, you know, Sarah, you're afraid, and if you run from fear now, it will follow you for the rest of your life. And clearly that was a very defining moment for me. It was coachable. My dad was awesome and God totally used him to help me. But I know that fear, God doesn't want us in any way, shape, fashion, or form to be controlled or absolutely manipulated or dominated by fear. So if you're struggling with fear, why don't you get on the phone, get on the website. We would love to pray for you. And you know, Mom, I know there's some good verses that speak to fear. Remind us of what some of those verses are.
Jesus said, fear not, for I'm with you. So I think speaking to the fear itself is good. I'm not going to be afraid of fear because I have Jesus in me, the hope of glory. He that's in me is greater than he that's in the world. Speak to the fear. But I want to address this too. The fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. So to fear God and not to be lawless, in this day so many people don't fear anything. They don't fear leadership, they don't fear policemen, nothing. But the fear of God's leadership and who He's put in place is the beginning of wisdom. But today, if you say, oh, I have so many fears, I'm just overwhelmed with fear. Or I have loved ones who are just, we're just caught in this terrible, terrible struggle of fear. Call us. We would just love to pray with you because we can come against fear. We can break the power of it in Jesus' name. Call right now.